Okay, here we are guys, back for another episode of the Conscious Living podcast, but also we'll be streaming through YouTube as well. We're very lucky to be here today with Sarah from Wanderlightly, and of course my sidekick Nick is with us. Sarah runs her own company out of her home, Wanderlightly, but I'll let Sarah tell us a bit more about that and also her journey to this point. So Sarah, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thrilled to have you.
Thanks so much, yeah.
Maybe just start us off with sort of how you got to this point in your life and how you started Wanderlightly. Can go as far back as you'd like. What sort of are the triggers that sort of got you to where you are today? Have you always had this mindset and thought about zero waste living? Yeah.
I suppose the biggest trigger for me was I went on to Tonga, and it was actually 5 years ago today that I was there. 5 years ago, 2 days ago that I was there. So it's a bit of an anniversary.
That's cool.
So I did this, I went on a yoga retreat / whale swim with a group called Living Ocean Yoga. Living Ocean's like a local charity here, and they had a yoga branch at the time. And because it was my birthday, I thought I'd really like to go away, and sort of 2 months out I booked this trip and we went away. And we went to this really small island, I forget the name of it, off Tonga. Like Tonga's like about 110 little islands, some pretty small and so forth, with about 9 of us. And every day we'd go out on the boat and we would swim with whales, and the boat was run by a Perth couple that were living in Tonga at the time. Very sort of eco-minded couple, and we'd sort of be out to sea, and there was this one moment we were out to sea and we came across this really large, it was sort of about this by this thick of polystyrene.
Oh wow.
And it was covered in barnacles and so forth, and
Floating on the surface.
just floating on the surface. So we fished it out and we'd come across quite a bit of trash, and we had these discussions about ocean pollution, and at that stage I knew about ocean pollution. I'd heard about that there was a lot of rubbish in the ocean, and that they collected these 5 sort of points on the, converging the currents. And I'd also heard there was this island as big as Texas, but that was sort of, my knowledge around it. So being on this boat with these people and discussing about their experience with what they would see in the ocean, they would go between Tonga and American Samoa to get supplies for their boat, and there was one time they said that their boat got damaged because there was a fridge floating,
Oh, wow.
it damaged the hull. So they would have a lot of trash, and everything.
Fridge floating.
Everything, a lot of those countries don't have any sort of real waste systems in place, and as soon as it rains, everything goes downstream and it's all into the ocean. So it really got me thinking about it. And I had this 4 a.m, it was exactly 4 o'clock in the morning, it might have been 5 years ago today. It was sort of a couple of days into the thing where I woke up in the middle of the night, and I was staying in this sort of, it was a room but it didn't have any windows, and I looked outside and I could see palm trees in the night, and I thought, there was this really clear head in my thought that said, you have to stop using plastic for a year. And I was like, okay, I'm going to do that. And then I went back to sleep. And when I woke up in the morning, I thought, it's pretty weird.
Yeah.
But I thought, okay, I'm going to do this. So when we went to breakfast the next morning, I said to Rum, I'm going to stop using plastic for a year, and I'm going to write a blog, and I'm going to share my experiences with other people. And everyone's like, that's great. So that was October. So I had 2 months. I decided I'd do it at the start of 2015. And 2015 rolled over, and I went completely plastic free for a year, as much as I could.
Of course, yeah.
So the idea was not to buy any new plastic unless it was something that I really needed, like something medical. At the time I had an animal, so anything for the animal, and just avoid it where I kind of could. And with that, I built this sort of temporary sort of website, and I would blog around it. And I had no knowledge of any of this stuff. I'm not a writer, I'm not a blogger, I'm not any of that sort of thing, but I wanted to share how other people could reduce their waste, and just through my own experiences. And I guess that kind of backdates to, I grew up in New Zealand, I moved here 19 years ago, and I've sort of always been brought up in a fairly conscious like recycling, but not just recycling as in washing your bodies and putting them in the bin, but you know, treating our resources really preciously. And you know, if there's some wood, you pop it aside and it might get used for another project. So just being really mindful of what we have in the resources. So I guess that's when I brought that into 2015. That's sort of where I wanted to go, was to reuse what we have. I mean,
So you'd already sort of been grown up with that mindset to reuse where possible and making sure you were recycling. Okay.
And I think I don't really recall recycling being a big thing in New Zealand. I remember collecting the cans, cash for cans or something, and you know, you take a giant bag, you'd spend ages like as a kid riding bikes around the street looking for cans and taking them, and maybe you get $4 after about 3 months of collecting them. But it's that mindset of collecting something that has use, and you know, even though it's not maybe a large financial gain, it's sort of, there's still something in there, and
it can be repurposed, and
absolutely, like aluminium and so forth is infinitely recyclable. So you know, why would we send it to landfill when it can be reused?
Definitely. So interesting. So then, sort of when you saw the trash in Tonga, that triggered this sort of idea to start the blog. What made you want to share that with people?
I guess at the time there wasn't a lot of information around plastic pollution. It wasn't in mainstream thinking. I didn't really buy bottled water, but I did buy a lot of like healthy products, all in plastic packaging.
Yeah, for sure.
And when I sort of did a wee audit before I started my plastic free, and at the time I lived alone, and I removed everything from my pantry and put it into glass jars just so I could sort of see what I had, and I had 186 pieces of food packaging.
Oh wow.
And that was as a single person living alone. So
oh my gosh, we need to do that.
It was kind of a frightening thing
big
to see.
Big wake up call,
that I'm, you know, I perceived myself to be fairly mindful about where I was buying things from and where they came from, countries, etc. But in terms of that, it was kind of a bit of a wake up call for myself. But to want to be able to share that with other people was more so, this can be done, and here are some sort of practical, easy ways to do it that don't cost a lot of money and that you don't have to go out of your way a lot for. It's just about sort of changing your lifestyle a little bit, and doing what you sort of can to make that work for you.
Yeah, definitely. Wow, very cool. So was the blog called Wanderlightly?
It was.
So the name behind Wanderlightly was, I think at the time, because I was doing a lot of travelling, so it was around wandering and then obviously doing that fairly lightly. So pop those together and that's what you get.
Is the blog still active, or?
It's there, but it's not particularly active.
So when did the products come into it?
So the products came into, in the first year I obviously you need to buy things, well, you don't need to buy things, but deodorant and so forth, everything came in plastic packaging.
For sure,
And so if it was natural, it was still in plastic packaging. So my idea was to make things that I could that would maybe substitute a store-bought thing. So I started making my own deodorant, toothpaste, various bits and pieces. And from there I would sort of, someone say, oh, I really like that, can you make it for me? So a few people, someone else at my work said to me, oh, could you make me some, and I'll try it. So she tried it, and then she said, you should sell this. So I thought, maybe I should sell this. And as well as because I do the cutlery sets and stuff as well, I had been to Indonesia and had some wooden cutlery that I'd bought to use and really liked, and then decided to also source that from some artisans over there, so a lady that I connected with. So
awesome. Cool. Did you have experience in selling products?
None.
Was that quite daunting?
Look, it was, I guess I'd always sort of dabbled in things like markets and stuff. You know, you have some secondhand clothes, you go to a market or whatever. I've always been quite creative in terms of sewing and making things and cooking and etc. So it was kind of a natural progression to do that, but the selling of it was a different progression. I sort of sold on Etsy, and I still do for quite a long time, because it was sort of an easy marketplace to get as much as you can out there, and just recently I've shifted it to my own website.
Yeah, awesome.
In that 5-year period, have you been seeing, small changes through people, like-minded people around you, and becoming more conscious like you? Because I'm sure it's the same for Jess. We're drawn to a lot more people that are like-minded like ourselves.
Yeah.
And that's such a good frame time, because you've got those 5 years of actually seeing slowly the progression, slowly the changes, not only for yourself but also for your business.
I guess the change that I've seen is it's so much more, like it's more out there in terms of the media, and people are really aware of it, and even something as simple as people having takeaway coffee cups. It's sort of like it's the new smoking to have a takeaway coffee cup. What have you got one of those for? Or a plastic water bottle. So in terms of it reaching the general population and that information and people being aware of it, I think has really shifted. And I think there was a shift it felt to me about 3 years ago, there was like a shift of people being quite conscious of not just taking their own plastic bags to the shop, but how their food was being packaged, and people noticing that packaging was seemed to be getting more and more in terms of like your general supermarket fruit and veg being more packaged.
Yes.
So that shifted the other way from the store perspective, unfortunately. Yeah.
And then have you noticed people around you as well, sort of after, especially you first started to cut plastics that first year, them taking on things that you had done?
Yeah, and I guess that was my real aim, was not to be preachy, because I don't think that ever works. But just to show, just to be that.
Yeah,
to
like
be
lead by
that.
example.
Yeah,
exactly.
And I'll have people coach me saying, I just want you to know that I don't do this anymore.
Yeah.
And I thought of you.
Oh, that's
when
so
I was
awesome.
And that's really cool for me. It's like, great, that's like one less piece of plastic. But it's also a mindset change of how we're viewing things,
Yeah, definitely. I noticed that a friend of mine is a marine biologist, and so we're both super interested as well in zero waste. But when you see someone picking up rubbish, like you just sort of feel like, oh, that's so nice that somebody else is thinking about that this trash is going to end up in the ocean if I don't pick it up and put it in a bin or recycle it if it's possible to be recycled. Yeah, it's cool to be able to see that sort of flow on effect.
Well, I think it's that kind of collective consciousness where people are, this is affecting me, even though indirectly, I didn't throw that there, but it is affecting me, or it is going to affect people around me or my environment or so forth. And but being part of beach cleans and so forth, there was a period of time where I worked with Living Ocean to do some beach cleans, and that was amazing, like to see. There was one day we had about 100 people come to Palm Beach, and you look at Palm Beach and it's beautiful and you don't think there's much trash there, and the stuff you'd find was amazing. Couches, tyres, like
the most obscure things that you come across.
We found a mannequin once.
Like a body?
Yeah, like a torso. A torso.
I think the hard thing with the ocean as well is that people just see what's on the surface, and that's the really hard thing. No one really knows what's actually underneath, unless you're consistently diving or fishing it up with nets. And that's the crazy thing. People might go on a boat, oh yeah, there's a bottle here, there's a bottle there, but I think we would be in our brain, we wouldn't be able to fathom how much stuff would be underneath the ocean. And it's so sad, because I know Jess and I, we just did a trip to Europe, and we saw so many microplastics in such a beautiful place. It's crazy. But I think if people actually saw how much trash was underneath, not just on the surface, it'd blow everyone's minds. And it's the same for out here, when it rains, then all the trash comes out and about, and then people are like, there's actually a lot of trash out there. But it's not just affecting our land. I feel like it's affecting the ocean as well. So
it's definitely the microplastics, and even swimming at my local beach, I'll collect hair ties on my wrist, 3 or 4 just in one swim, which then get washed and I reuse. There's just, I think Newport's one of the most polluted beaches in Sydney for microplastics.
Oh wow.
They did a study recently, I think it was AusMat.
Okay.
So it was one of the top 5. And to walk along it looks beautiful.
Yeah.
But, having that little closer look, and
exactly.
there's a lot of great movies out now that are really illustrating that to people, whereas before, I guess we thought it was someone else's problem or that someone else did it. You know, and it's like, well, actually, we're part of that problem if we're still using it.
Exactly. It's interesting that you do say that you feel like there has been a shift in even, especially the last 3 years. There do seem to be so many more films and documentaries around. And, even just people on Instagram that are following and can find out so much more information about reducing plastic consumption. Is there anyone that you're particularly inspired by, or a film that you've watched that you found really sort of...
The first film I watched was, I think it was called A Plastic Ocean.
Was that one of the film festivals by up at Mossman? Did they do one?
They might have done it up there. The lady that made it was, she was Hawaiian, I think. Her name was Angela. And that was the first one I'd seen, and I was just like, whoa, absolutely blown away, because they were in the, I forget the islands now, where all the albatrosses are and the chicks and the rubbish, and it's just like, wow, this is real, you know. And I mean, I've seen so many more movies now. And there's
that one,
just
the first time you see it, it's quite confronting.
And not only that, like what plastic is doing to our bodies, we're not really sure. Skin's being the largest organ, and as soon as we heat plastic, that's transferred into our body, and how's that affecting our, it's a known endocrine disruptor.
Something that I think sort of comes up often when you talk about like zero waste, being more eco-friendly and more like conscious in the way you're living. I find that people say that it's a more expensive lifestyle and not accessible to all people. Is that something that you've heard come up in conversation, or that you felt when you were actually shifting and reducing your plastics?
I have definitely heard it come up in conversation, and I would say it absolutely can be more expensive, but it doesn't need to be. If you go out and buy all the fancy new wooden brushes, it's going to be, it's going to be expensive.
And the most expensive stores.
If you just, the first year I feel like I saved thousands of dollars in terms of just food, because I wasn't eating processed food. I was eating, I was cooking my own things. Bulk food stores can be a little bit more expensive, but I tend to only buy what I need. So then I don't have that waste issue as much.
For sure.
So it's more mindful of like treating everything that we have as a resource. For example, off the top of my head, I wouldn't go and buy new cloths. I would chop up old t-shirts or whatever, and then so it's reusing things as much as we can until, before I didn't save things like my veggie scraps to make stock with, and now I save all the little bits and pieces, and when I've got enough, I'll make a vegetable stock, so I'm not buying vegetable stock. Really basic things. And one of the challenging things I find is that because I'm not buying packaged food as much, you tend to be making a lot more things, so you sort of have to pick what you want to make. Like, for example, a really good snack for me is hummus, so I'll try and make sure I have some of those, but some of that in the fridge, but then it's like, oh, we're out of hummus and I can't be bothered making it either. It's that thing of you don't have the quick snacks, you sort of have to have other things on hand.
So that time sort of comes into play then, because you have to meal prep or you have to do all those sorts of things. Because we live in that sort of lifestyle now where people just want things now, and it's so accessible, and that's the hard thing. And and that's where so many people, they're getting just caught out because they can drive 2 minutes down the road and get this or get that. That's and as we spoke about, like the coffee, everyone, like it's crazy. I think Jess and I, we spoke it was a couple of days ago, and if a person bought, let's say, 100 coffees in 100 days, that's probably a coffee machine if you wanted to look at it like that, you know what I mean? So you could be making your coffees at home and not spending your money, and then also all those lids and plastic as well. Like it's as crazy as that. So
and we've got, I don't drink coffee, but my partner does, and he'll just prep it the night before and make it before he goes to work, and it's not much longer than standing in line waiting for your coffee, and then you've made it to just how you like it as well. But I think the idea of convenience, we've really gotten swept up in it. Really swept up in it. And one of the things I've found doing workshops, and it's kind of an interesting point, is when I've been chatting to people, the resistance that I've had about people switching their behaviour has been from older people.
Oh, really?
Which has interested me, because they never had these conveniences.
Yeah.
You know, I had one gentleman say he just could not stop using plastic bags to line his rubbish bin because what else was he going to do? And I thought, well, you probably didn't in the past. What did you do in the past? And a lot of what I started to do was think about what did my grandparents do? You know, how did they wrap their rubbish? How did they preserve their food, etc. So, yeah.
That's interesting that you talk about the workshops. Could you tell us a bit more about what you sort of share in those workshops and the responses you've had?
Yeah, so I do, I mean, the workshops again came from someone sort of saying, oh, I like this, and would you offer it to other people? And I was like, yeah, why not? So I do a few, I do some with children, and it's around, and children know the stuff, so it's really just...
Children know the stuff, what do you mean?
They know about sustainability, not maybe in terms of sustainability, but they know that they need to treat the planet well, and they know that they need to not use a lot of plastic and throw it in the ocean or whatever. There's just this, they just sort of know. So I'll do beeswax wrapped workshops with them, and what we'll do is we'll do a little bit of work around the ocean, and where we want to reduce things like Glad wrap and plastic wrap in their lunch boxes, and replace them with the beeswax wrap. So they create artwork on the fabric, and then we dip it through the wax. So they've sort of got a creative piece as well as something that they can reuse and is tangible. And then I do beeswax wraps with adults, so using reclaimed fabric, like fabric that I've found at op shops or that's been gifted to me. And I use a local beeswax and mix it into a blend with resin and jojoba oil, and then that replaces your food covering.
For sure.
Yeah, definitely. And then cleaning workshops, so I do those helping people just find alternatives to cleaning products because they're fairly toxic, and that's going straight down the drain. Cleaning products don't need to disclose what's in them, so who knows what's in them.
So
and it's that whole mindfulness of like, this is going down the sink, and like, now where's this water going to go? It's all ending up in the ocean. Exactly. It's that whole disconnect and the convenience aspect. We just lose that connection from the source of food and where things end up. It's nuts.
And I think it's that disconnection and convenience that sort of traps us a little bit. But yeah, for example, like with the cleaning workshops, I'll take along the little green sponges with the yellow things, and just show people that it's a plastic sponge, and every time you wash, you're shedding microfibers down the ocean, and then I'll show an alternative, and people are like, oh, I much prefer that. Generally, it looks nicer because it's made from coconut fibre. It's maybe a little bit more expensive, like $2 for one of those things, as opposed to $2 for a packet of 4. I don't know. But it's just making the switch, and people want to make the switch and do the right thing. They're just not sure where to start. So that's what the workshops I try and cover in the workshops. Just
awesome.
Showing people how to do that.
Do you have like a top zero waste hack that you can share? Like something, like obviously there's not taking, buying plastic water bottles and coffee cups, but like maybe something that people haven't heard about that is quite easy to switch. The bin liners one is so fascinating because it's so true. Like, we're also addicted to having a plastic bin liner.
Well, and the bin liner is interesting because as soon as you switch from using a plastic bag and being mindful about like where your waste's going, we've got a worm farm, so the worm farm scraps, so there's no real wet things going into the rubbish, so then putting it in a paper bag or lining it with newspaper is fine, because then you're just going to wrap. We sort of have, I'd probably say, that much rubbish a week, give or take a little bit, and then everything else is recycling, soft plastic recycling. We have the worm farm scraps. Other random things like batteries and stuff get put in jars under the sink for later distribution. I think a good zero waste hack for people starting out is definitely being prepared and having those things on hand, like your water bottle, a container, if you want to stop and get something on the way home and takeaway or whatever. Having a little kit in the car, like in your boot of your car, is really handy. So just popping some old plastic containers or jars in the car, and then they're there,
that's a great one. That's good, because you often catch yourself out and you're like, oh, I don't have my water bottle, I'm just going to have to be thirsty.
Yeah. And again, a lot of those things of you don't have to buy a fancy coffee cup. I've seen people with jars and they wrap a bit of fabric around or a whole lot of rubber bands around there. You know, there's just. Yeah, it definitely doesn't need to be an expensive thing.
I think, and unfortunately it has become a little bit of like a, look at me with my expensive water bottle coffee cup. But exactly, it doesn't.
Because there's the glossy side of it, and that's
I mean, a great way to put it.
Yeah, there's a glossy side, but there's also the real side of you know, this is just what's happening. You know, my water bottle looks terrible because it's been bashed around and it's been in lots of countries and rolled on the ground and
it's got history.
The lid's been squashed on, but I guess when you are going to invest in things, invest in good quality that will last you. You know,
for sure.
What is would you say then your core reason, I guess, to reducing plastic? Like, is there something you could narrow it down to? Like, we've sort of touched on the health impacts of plastic, but obviously the impact on the environment and the ocean. Like, is there, I don't know, if you had to sort of summarise why you want to reduce your plastic footprint?
Well, it's a finite resource. You know, and I think plastic's a very valuable resource, and I don't think we treat it as such a valuable resource. I mean, at the very end of it, it's been a dinosaur, you know, that's sat in the ground and then become petroleum, etc. So it's a very labour, energy intensive resource to pull out of the ground for something that we're going to use so quickly and throw away. So I guess the whole reason for me to do this is to be conscious of my impact, not only on the planet, but that sort of ripples out to everywhere, and to be mindful, to be completely mindful of all of those things. And we can't be mindful all the time, but as much as possible
we can try.
We can do. I suppose.
Exactly. That's
and whatever it is.
There's no end point like that. It's exactly just that daily practice of just being mindful.
And I think there's a lot of talk around the moment of there's quite a lot of judgment around what people are doing or not doing, and I think that sort of really needs to go. It needs to just be, that's amazing that you're doing that, and just because you're not doing that doesn't mean you're horrible or you're a bad person. It's just that's where you are, and you know, everyone will do what they can when they can. I mean, maybe some people won't, but it's a pretty small amount of people.
Yeah, exactly. Just trying is a great start. Just start somewhere and
do what you can with what you have.
Exactly.
That's true.
Awesome. Well, just one last thing, unless you have anything else.
No, been amazing today.
Is, I guess we've sort of touched on it, but if there is one piece of wisdom or soundbite from your life and everything you've been through and experienced so far in your life, maybe you've heard it from somebody or you've read it or you've thought of it yourself.
I think it would be to do what you can and not be hard on yourself if you can't do something. If you go out somewhere and you forget something and you have to use a single-use plastic, whatever, bring it home, treasure it, recycle it, put it in the right area, and I guess that would be it.
Do what you can.
I think so. I think that's awesome. Thank you so much, Sarah.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.